Chapter 4 Hardship. How's Jack? Is he hurt bad? Before Tina left for school, the neighbors began to come in. Although the Wilsons had no telephone, the news of Jack's injury had spread. Miss Bryant came back and forth with messages from people who had phoned at her house to inquire. Others came to the door. Celia met them with baby Letty on her arm. She told them all she knew. Then Uncle Chick and Grandma came in Uncle Jack's car to take Celia and Mama and Daddy to the hospital. Mama hustled Jeff and Tina off to school. When she got there, school had begun. Tina could not keep her mind on her lessons at all. She kept looking out of the window. The schoolhouse was on Blackberry Hill, and across the valley she could see the coal tipple, the big black ugly thing, standing there by Linden number 3, where they brought Uncle Jack out on a stretcher, crushed and hurt. Tina put her head down on her desk and began to cry again. A kind hand touched her shoulder. "What's the matter, Christina?" asked Miss Sanford. "It's Uncle Jack," began Tina. Jack Ferris," cried Miss Sanford, frightened. "Has anything happened to Jack?" "He's hurt bad," said Tina. "They took him to the hospital last night." "Oh no," cried Miss Sanford. Tears came to her eyes, but she brushed them away. "I'm sure you don't feel like studying much today, Tina. Wouldn't you like to go home?" "Now?" asked Tina. "Before school is out?" "Yes," said Miss Sanford. "Nobody's there," said Tina. "They've all gone to the hospital." "Is there any other place you'd like to go?" "Grandma Ferris's," said Tina, "but she's gone to the hospital too. Uncle Jack is her baby boy." "Is your grandpa at home?" asked Miss Sanford. "I suppose so," said Tina. "He wasn't in the car." "You go and see Grandpa," said the teacher. "He has some mine ponies, hasn't he?" "Yes, 2 new ones," said Tina. The thought of the mine ponies cheered Tina up. How was Snowball? Was her hurt foot well, and had she gone back to work? And those 2 new ponies with the pretty names, Bright Eyes and Diamond. She had almost forgotten them. It would be nice to see the ponies again. But when she got to Grandpa's, her happiness faded. The house was closed and empty. Tina hurried to the barn as fast as she could. Was something wrong here too? Grandpa was in one of the stalls doing something. She heard him muttering to himself. Tina came in and called out, "Can I have a pony ride, Gramp?" "Pony ride?" growled Grandpa. "What's the matter? Are you crazy, girl? All you can think of is pony rides. When are you going to get a little sense?" Tina's heart sank. Grandpa was cross today. His rheumatism must be bad. That always made him cross. He came out of the stall limping. Yes, that meant a bad knee. Tina looked in and saw a sad sight. The white pony Snowball was lying down, and foam was coming from her mouth. She must be very sick. Grandpa was putting a brown liquid into a bottle with a long neck. He paid no attention to Tina at all. "What's the matter with Snowball?" asked Tina. "Matter enough," said Grandpa. "Bad case of colic. Can't hardly walk, can't stand up, just lays around." "Colic? What's that?" asked Tina. "Don't you know?" Grandpa's eyes pierced hers. It's good old-fashioned tummy ache, same as you kids get from eatin' green apples. That fool pony broke down her fence and got over to that apple tree and ate herself sick. She's got a bad case of cramps. Like Jeff had that time, asked Tina. Yep, same thing, said Grandpa. Had to have the vet come and give her some dope or she'd a died. Grandpa took the bottle in the stall and got ready to give the pony another dose. Come here, Christina. You hold her head up, said Grandpa, so I can pour it down her throat. Tina never knew how she did it, but together she and Grandpa got the medicine down. Snowball opened one eye and looked up, as if she knew they were trying to help her. Snowball can't have apples any more, said Grandpa. You kids must remember that. Another case of colic will finish her sure. We don't want Snowball to die, do we? Asked Tina. Not on your life, said Grandpa. The pony seemed to be resting easier, so Grandpa and Tina walked out to the pasture gate. There were 3 other ponies there beside Bright Eyes and Diamond. The others were Stubby, Red, and Spot. Grandpa rented them out to the other Punch Mines. You tell Jeff to come and ride them, said Grandpa. If they get too fat, they won't work. Tell him to come by each evening and give them a run. They need more exercise. Grandpa and Tina looked at the new ponies and talked about how pretty they were. Tina almost forgot about Uncle Jack. Then they went back to the house. Grandpa stopped in the kitchen and brought out a dish of Grandma's freshly made cookies. Tina and Grandpa helped themselves and sat down in the porch swing to visit. This was Grandpa's favorite place, for he could see the coal camp, which he loved, and where he had lived all his life. He could see the black tipple, symbol of his life work in the mine. Grandpa liked to sit there to dream and remember his past life. As he talked to this little girl, he seemed almost to be talking to himself. I've been a miner for 60 years, said Grandpa. Began when I was 10 years old, because my daddy was a miner before me. Miners are clean people, honest people. There's lots of hardship and long hours, but I never had an accident till I'd worked 59 years. Then I lost one finger. I retired at 60 and got my pension. Then I started in business for myself, leasing pony mines. I can't give up and do nothing. It's bad for a man to give up and quit. What he said made Tina think of Uncle Jack again. Gramp, said Tina, do you think Uncle Jack's going to die? Grandpa turned to her quickly. Die? Nothing, he said. It would take more than a ton of slate to kill that scalawag. Broken shoulder and collarbone. What's that? Nothing. Grandpa reached out and took Tina's hand in his own. He rocked the swing gently back and forth, humming a little tune. Tina felt better as he told her tales of things Uncle Jack used to do when he was a little boy. Run along home now, he added. Your mama'll be looking for you. And don't you worry about Uncle Jack. The days were getting short now, with cooler weather, and the sky was dark with clouds. It was foggy in the valley, and as Tina ran down the hill, she saw the fog coming up to meet her. A dense white fog was rising from the coal camp, blotting out the houses. Tina ran fast until it reached her. Then she had to slow up. Suddenly she was in the middle of it. She could hardly see the houses now. A light went on in one house. Whose was it? The road turned, and she stepped in a ditch. She could not tell which way she was going. She wanted to get home before the fog got bad. All the houses looked alike. Even in broad daylight, Tina had to count them to find which one she lived in. Now she could not see the numbers on them at all. How would she ever find her house in the fog? She kept bravely on. Now there was a fence by the road. She kept her hand on it, walking in the grass. A truck zoomed out of nowhere. She heard but could not see it until the dim lights were almost on her. Then it went on. Which way was the road? There were no sidewalks. She'd better keep hold of the fence. When the fence ended, she came to a ditch. Jumping across, she was afraid she was in the road again. What if a car, a big truck filled with coal, should come along before she saw it? Tina tried to hold back the tears, but couldn't. She stumbled on, not knowing where she was going. Then she found another fence with pickets. She felt the pickets one by one until she came to the gate. "I'll go in," she said. "I'll go in the house and see who lives here. I'll find out whose house it is." The house stood close to the road, the narrow porches in front. Tina went in the gate and found her way to the porch. Where were the lights? Where were the windows? Who lived here anyway? She came to the front door, which was shut tight. She knocked, but no answer came. She felt her way to the window at one side, and her heart sank, for it was boarded up. She went back to the window on the other side of the door. It was boarded up too. It was one of the empty houses. Nobody lived there. The family had gone away to some other town, where the father could get work. More and more families were leaving Linden. Tina tried to think whose house it could be, but the names of the families who had gone escaped her. The house was empty. She could not go in. The fog was heavier now than ever. She looked down and could hardly see the front step. There was nothing to do but wait, so she sat down and leaned her head against the post. She folded her arms tightly together. The fog was so damp it chilled her through and through, but at least here she was safe. Tina never knew how long she sat there. She must have dozed a while. Suddenly she woke up. A dog was barking. Was it Queenie? Jeff's own Queenie? She heard a boy's voice calling the dog, and there was Jeff as big as life, and the fog was gone. It had lifted to the mountain top and left the valley clear. "So there you are," Jeff said. "I've been hunting high and low for you." The fog, began Tina. "I went up to Gramps, and Gramp said you left there a long time ago," said Jeff. "When I got home, you hadn't come, so I went out to look for you." "I got all turned around," said Tina. "I didn't know where I was going. Whose house is this, anyhow?" "Don't you even know where you are?" asked Jeff. "This is where the Davises used to live, right next to the Hurleys. You were almost home and didn't know it. I was afraid I'd be run over," said Tina. "A big coal truck came along and nearly hit me." "You were smart to go up on a porch and wait," said Jeff. "That was the safest thing to do. Do you know what happened to that coal truck? It ran into the Murphys' fence, turned over, and dumped all the coal in the Murphys' yard. They got a big load of coal for nothing." "Was the man hurt?" asked Tina. "No, he jumped out," said Jeff. "But boy, was he scared. Come on home now and get warm. Daddy and I brought the coal heater in from the porch and set it up in the living room. Mama's got a nice warm fire going." Did they get back from the hospital? Asked Tina. Yes, they came back early, said Jeff. How's Uncle Jack? Asked Tina. Better, said Jeff. Come on, let's run. I've got to get Colin here, Queenie. The fog had lifted now. The children ran home, and Tina felt warmer when she got there, but she went straight to the stove in the front room and held out her hands. Waves of comforting heat radiated from the stove and filled the room. Daddy and Celia and baby Letty were sitting up close. They all loved the genial warmth of the coal heater. They talked cheerfully about Uncle Jack now, until Mama called them into the kitchen for supper. When payday came again, Daddy was not at home. He had gone with Uncle Chick to Virginia to see about getting some mine equipment. So Mama sent Jeff to the company store to draw Daddy's pay. Jeff put the statement in an inside pocket of his jacket, where it would be safe. Mama told Tina to go along with him, so she put on her old winter coat and tied a scarf over her head. The day was cold for November, and a stiff wind was blowing. The children started early because they wanted to be there when the office window opened. They passed the Bryant house and saw Miss Bryant going for water at the spigot in the Murphys' yard. Dave Hurley, on his crutches, waved from his front porch. The next house was the Davises' empty one, and then came the Murphys. At the gate stood Peggy. She was older than Tina and not very friendly. She liked to pull Tina's hair and slap her on the back. Sometimes it hurt. "Where you kids goin'?" demanded Peggy. "Down to the store," said Tina. "Don't speak to her," whispered Jeff. "Don't tell her what I'm going for." "What are you going to the store on payday for?" asked Peggy. Neither Tina nor Jeff answered. They hurried on. Peggy Murphy came running behind them. "Bet I know what you're doin'," shouted Peggy. "Bet you're gonna draw your daddy's pay." The children ran and did not answer. At the company store, the line of men and a few women was already waiting. Jeff and Tina took their places behind Miss Watkins, a large, stout woman. They saw Peggy Murphy lying in wait for them. They saw Hilda Cruppa come up and talk to Peggy. They saw Cliff Krause and Sammy Blagg come up on bicycles. Peggy talked to them too, and pointed to Jeff and Tina. Jeff felt worried, but did not tell Tina how he felt. At last, the window opened, and soon his turn came. There was over $100 for Daddy this time, even after various items had been charged out. Mr. Fraser smiled at Tina this time, and told Jeff to button the envelope up tight so he would not lose it. They walked slowly out the door side by side. "You stay right by me, Tina," said Jeff, "no matter what happens." "All right, Jeff," said Tina. "Here they come." Sammy Blogg was a big boy, and known to be a bully. Cliff Krause was smaller, but liked to do whatever Sammy did. The boys left their bicycles beside the store and came over to Jeff. Jeff wished that Virgil Tucker was there. Together they could beat the two other boys up. "This is a hold-up," said Sammy. He pointed his fingers like a gun. "Hand it over." Jeff smiled. "You're kiddin', Sammy. Do you think you're in a movie?" Cliff Krause said, "We need some cash. Hand us over a $10 bill." Jeff turned to Tina and said, "Let's run." The two ducked and started running, only to be blocked by Peggy Murphy and Hilda Cruppa. "Give us what you got," said Peggy. "Why, Hilda," said Tina, "I thought you were a friend of mine and not Peggy's." There was no time for talk. Jeff and Tina ran as fast as they could go. Jeff cut across the railroad track, and several yards, with Tina at his heels. Sammy and Cliff ran to get their bicycles, and followed along the road, hoping to cut him off. Tina ran as hard as she could, but could not keep up. There were Jeff's flying legs a mile ahead of her. She was panting for breath when a hard blow came on her shoulder. She fell to the ground, with Peggy Murphy on top of her. She fought with her fists and kicked with her feet, but could not get Peggy off. Then a blow hit her in the face. Her nose began to bleed, and she could not see out of her eye. She lay stunned for a moment. Where was Jeff? Had he got away? Were they beating him up? Were they taking Daddy's pay? Tina felt like an old woman as she tried to get to her feet, expecting more blows. She did not know which way to run. Fightin' again. All you coal camp kids do is fight. A woman leaned her head out of a window and shouted, "Go away, you bad little girl. Don't you ever come in my yard again. Fightin' like a wildcat. I'll call the police. Go away." Tina stumbled to her feet and tried to go on. Then she looked around to see if she was alone. Peggy Murphy was gone. She had done her worst and fled. But there stood Hilda Cruppa, scared and white. Hilda's tears were rolling down her face. She came slowly over to Tina. "Go away," said Tina. "I thought you were my friend." "I am," said Hilda, crying again. "I tried and tried to get Peggy Murphy to stop, but she wouldn't. I wasn't helping her. I was trying to make her stop. But she said she was going to give you a black eye, and she did." Hilda put her arm around Tina's shoulder. "Peggy Murphy told me she hated you because your daddy's got work in the mine, and her daddy's laid off," said Hilda. "So she wanted to get even with you." "They were after my daddy's pay," said Tina. "Those bad boys. Peggy put them up to it." "They didn't get it," said Hilda. "Jeff got away. I saw him." "How?" asked Tina. "Virgil Tucker saw him running and called to him," said Hilda. "He jumped on a coal truck that was going to the tipple." Mr. Tucker, Virgil's daddy, was driving it. He stopped, and Jeff got in the cab with him and Virgil. "Oh, I'm glad," said Tina, wiping her bloody nose on her skirt. "I can't see much out of my eye. Do I look terrible?" "Your eye's all swollen up," said Hilda. Tina tried to brush off her clothes. "I'm covered with blood and mud. What will Mama say?" "I'll tell her you couldn't help it," said Hilda. "If you come home with me, Mama won't scold," said Tina. Tina walked slowly home, with Hilda's arm around her waist. She hoped she would never see Peggy Murphy again. She dreaded going in the house, but it wasn't so bad after all. "Oh, those Murphys," cried Mama. She listened to Hilda's story. Then she bathed Tina's face, gave her a pad for her bloody nose, and bandaged her eye. She had her change her soiled dress. Jeff had already come home with Daddy's pay safe in his pocket. When Daddy came home and heard the tale, he said, "So the kids still scrap at Scrapper's Corners. That place has always had a bad name. When I was a boy, after the men were paid off, they'd get drunk and fight. The boys fought too. Some carried knives and razors. I've got 2 or 3 holes in my back of my head made by rocks." "What a week this has been," said Mama. Uncle Jack under the slate with a crushed shoulder and arm. Tina lost in the fog. Jeff chased by a bunch of hoodlums. Tina beaten up by a neighbor girl. Snowball sick with the colic. What's next, I wonder? Although Mama did not realize it, worse was still to come, and soon. The first day, the next week, Daddy came home, tired and dejected. When Tina and Ronnie ran to meet him and look for a treat in his bucket, there was nothing there. He had not even a smile for them. He did not take them by the hand. The children knew something was wrong. "What is it, Walter?" asked Mamma at the supper table. "What are you worrying about?" "Uncle Jack is coming along fine. We've been able to pay something on his hospital bill. Tina's black eye is healing, and she'll soon be pretty again. Snowball has recovered from the colic and can go back to work. But I've lost my job," said Daddy, laying down his fork. "No," said Mamma. "Oh no, they can't do that to you after all the years you've worked for them." "But they have," said Daddy. "They laid off 20 more men, and I'm one of the 20. "I can't believe it," said Mamma slowly. "Somehow, when things like this happen to other people, you can't believe it could ever happen to you." "Until it does," said Daddy. "Then you've got to believe it, whether you want to or not." "Oh, Daddy," said Tina, "you won't be a miner any more." "Sugar," said Daddy, "I'll be a miner till the day I die." Chapter 5. Pony. "Jeff, get up, Jeff, Jeff." The boy felt someone shaking him, but he turned over and fell asleep again. "Jeff, Jeff, how many times must I call you?" Jeff opened his eyes and threw the covers back. It was time to get up and make the fire in the kitchen stove. He shivered as he pulled on his clothes. The room was very cold. Jeff pulled up the blind and looked out. The first snow was already on the ground. Its fresh whiteness made the dingy mine houses look still darker. Winter was early this year. Jeff hoped for lots of snow. Snow meant sliding, and there were steep mountain slopes on all sides for that. Jeff went in the kitchen, where it was still colder. He opened the lids of the cook stove, put paper in and wood on top. He poured in a few drops of kerosene and lighted it. As soon as the wood began to burn, he put coal on. The coal bucket was nearly empty. He had forgotten to fill it the night before. He unlocked the back door, took it out, and ran to the coal shed by the road. He shoveled coal in and brought it back. Now Mamma was up, getting breakfast. Oatmeal was cooking on the stove, and Mamma was mixing biscuits. The smell of coffee filled the air. Celia came out with baby Letty on her arm. "Jeff," said Mamma, "Uncle Chick left word for you to ride the new ponies over to the mine this morning. Go on up to Gramps and get them. Uncle Chick's miners will be waiting for them." "Tina," called Jeff, "come on. We have to take the ponies to the mine." Tina came in the kitchen, buttoning up her coat. The children ate quickly and went out. They ran up the hill to Grandpa's. Jeff loved to ride the ponies to Uncle Chick's mine. He took them down on Monday mornings and brought them back on Friday nights. Sometimes Tina went along. This morning it was clammy and cold in the valley, for the sun had not yet peeped over the mountain. Bright Eyes and Diamond, the new ponies, were working now. Okie Travis, the pony driver, had been breaking them in for several weeks. Diamond was still a little wild. Each time Jeff got on, Diamond reared up and tried to throw him. But Jeff knew what to do. "Go easy," called Grandpa. "Talk to him easy and he'll do what you say." Diamond quieted down and Jeff rode on ahead. Tina followed on Bright Eyes. The children rode from Grandpa's pasture on around Laurel Mountain until they came to a stripped section. Soil and rock on the side of the hill had been stripped off by bulldozers, exposing a huge cliff some 40 feet high. Here was Uncle Chick's pony mine. At the bottom of the cliff was an entry with an apron of timbers over it. In front was a rickety tipple with a truck standing under it. Tracks led from the entry up the slope to the top of the tipple. Over on the right side was the fan entry. A crude pony barn with a small fenced-off lot was at one side. In a low place, a pool of water had collected for the ponies to drink. The old ponies, Snowball and Ginger, had just come out of the mine with a load of coal. Okie Travis was unhitching them. Snowball had recovered from her colic and was working again. Tina stared at the pony. She hardly knew her. Snowball's white fuzzy fur was black and dirty now from mud and coal dust. She called her name, but the pony did not turn her head. Snowball was not a pet any more. She had turned into a mine pony again. Did Snowball live two separate lives, and forget one while she was living the other? Tina turned away. "I like Bright Eyes better anyhow," she tried to comfort herself. "But now Bright Eyes will turn into a mine pony too." Tears came to the girl's eyes. Jeff and Tina watched Okie hitch Bright Eyes and Diamond to the coal car. Diamond was the leader, and Bright Eyes came behind. Okie put a miner's lamp on Diamond's forehead and hung the battery in a leather case from the pony's collar. "Hup," called Okie, snapping his strap in the air. Okie slapped a board down on the coal car, called it his saddle, and sat on it. The ponies went down the track at a run. At the entry, Okie had to duck his head and bend over because it was so low. The roof of the mine just cleared the ponies' heads. In fact, Diamond had a leather shield on his forehead, so he would not be hurt if he hit any of the cross timbers. Uncle Chick's 5 miners were inside the mine, shoveling coal by hand into coal cars. Jeff and Tina sat down and waited. Poor Bright Eyes, he would have to work hard now, and Diamond was flighty. Would he ever make a good mine pony? Tina hated to see the ponies start to work. They would not stay plump and round now. They would soon grow strong and muscular. They would get lean and lanky and wouldn't be pretty any more. When Uncle Chick came out, Jeff said, "Don't let Okie whip Diamond, Uncle Chick, or he'll have trouble." "I know," said Uncle Chick. "If Diamond don't break, I'll have to sell him off and get another pony." Jeff went over to the pony lot and put bridles on Ginger and Snowball. "Okie hates to see Snowball and Ginger go," said Uncle Chick. "Them two never lifted a foot or caused any trouble in the 5 years since we've had 'em. Them ponies are so glad to see us each." Morning, they walk over and get right in the harness. "Do they know what you tell them?" asked Tina. "They know more than a lot of people do," said Uncle Chick. "They go right up to that buggy to be hitched, and when they come out, they know just where to go and when to turn at the tipple to get out of the way when Okie unhooks 'em. Inside the mine, if there's bad slate overhead, they won't budge an inch. They seem to know a rock fall might kill 'em. Okie will sure miss 'em when they're gone, but they need a long rest now. That's why I'm sending them back to Gramp." Jeff brought Ginger and Snowball out of the lot. "We got to hurry back, Uncle Chick, so we won't be late for school," said Jeff. "Just a minute," said Uncle Chick. "If your dad wants to start a pony mine, Gramp will lease him that one over yonder. Some fella started it a while back, and then up and left. The coal seam's 36 inches there and pretty good. Dad likes the big mine, said Jeff. He don't want to go back to pick and shovel, he said. He'd rather work with machinery. I know how it feels, said Uncle Chick, but he wants to feed his family, don't he? And since he's laid off now, I thought. Dad says ponies are on their way out, and big machinery is coming in, said Jeff. Yes, to displace the men, said Uncle Chick. You tell him the small mines will be here for a long time to come. Every time the big mines lay off men, they are bound to go to work in the little mines or starve. They can make work for themselves and be independent. Jeff shook his head, feeling sad inside. He could see both sides, and he did not know what the answer was. The next minute the children heard Oakie's "Huh" again. There comes Diamond out of the entry, then Bright Eyes, and a loaded coal car behind. The ponies had to pull hard up the sloping ramp to the dumping place on the tipple. Okie shouted. They stopped. Okie pulled the clevis pin which detached the harness from the coal car, and they stepped to one side out of the way. Okie pushed the buggy on ahead, where it tipped over and dumped the coal into the waiting truck below. Fine, fine, called Uncle Chick, climbing up the tipple ladder. They're working like veterans. He patted Diamond on the head. Tina climbed up and put her arms around Bright Eye's neck. Was Bright Eyes scared in the mine, Okie? She asked. Scared, Okie laughed. That pony scared? Scared of what? Scared of bats and rats, said Tina. Scared of the dark. Okie roared with laughter. Uncle Chick, can't a new pony get scared in the dark? Asked Tina. They don't like it too well at first, to go in the dark mine, said Uncle Chick. You have to lead them in to start, and coax them a bit. After a trip or two, they seem to like it. In a week's time, Bright Eyes will think he's been a mine pony all his life. But oh, it's so black dark in the mine. Tina remembered how she had felt herself. She put her arms around the pony's neck again. She whispered in his ear, If you don't like it, Bright Eyes, you just give Okie a swift kick. The children rode back on Snowball and Ginger and put them in Grandpa's barn. Then they ran off to school and got there just as the last bell rang. Oh, I hope nothing happens to Bright Eyes, said Tina, as they were taking off their wraps. So do I, said Jeff. It was only a week later that it happened. Jeff came tearing in the house with the news. I saw Okie in the pickup, panted Jeff. He's going to Mapleton for the vet. Something's happened to Bright Eyes. Oh no, cried Tina. You mean Diamond, not Bright Eyes. Diamond is the wild one. Okie said Bright Eyes, and he's hurt bad, said Jeff. I bet Okie was mean, and Bright Eyes kicked him, said Tina. I just know Bright Eyes don't like Okie one bit, and I don't either. Okie didn't get kicked, said Jeff. It's Bright Eyes, I tell ya. They think his leg is broke. What happened? Asked Daddy. Okie said Bright Eyes went crazy, said Jeff. He kicked his harness off and banged into the shuttle buggy and broke one of his hind legs. Oh no, I don't believe it. Tina began to cry. Okie wanted to shoot him, Jeff went on, but Uncle Chick sent him for the vet. Jeff and Tina and Daddy were at Grandpa's when Uncle Chick drove up in his truck. There, in the back, lay Bright Eyes, with his leg in a splint. It took 3 men and the vet to lift him out of the truck on a board and carry him into the stall. "Did Okie whip him, Uncle Chick?" asked Tina, after the vet went away. "I bet Okie was mean and made Bright Eyes mad." "It wasn't that way at all," said Uncle Chick. "Now if it had been Diamond, I wouldn't have been surprised. But you never can tell about these quiet ponies. Sometimes they surprise you." The ponies started running up the chute. Okie yelled, but Bright Eyes didn't get out of the way in time. The coal car rolled, and before it flipped over, it hit him on the leg and hurt it bad. He was in pain and kicked a lot. We had a hard time getting him quiet. "This means the end for old Bright Eyes," said Daddy. "The end of what?" asked Tina. Daddy hated to tell her, but he had to. "It's hard to save a pony with a broken leg," he said. "Usually it's better to put them out of the way. Even if his leg heals, Bright Eyes may never be able to work again." "The vet don't think it's broken," said Uncle Chick. "He thinks it's just turned and badly bruised and cut. The vet said to let him rest for a month, and then he'd be as good as new," added Jeff. "That's fine," said Daddy. "Let's hope he gets well." Before she went home, Tina went in the stall to see Bright Eyes. The pony was lying down on a bed of hay, covered with a blanket, his eyes closed. Tina was afraid to touch him. She just leaned over and whispered, "You don't like it there in the black dark, did ya?" she said. "You kicked to let them know how you felt. Too bad you hurt yourself so badly." The pony did not open his eyes or look at her. "I'll come by every day after school and take care of you," Tina went on. "And remember this, you won't have to go back in the mine to work any more. My daddy said so. As soon as your leg gets well, you'll be my pet. Do you hear me, Bright Eyes?" Tina and Jeff followed Daddy and hurried home. As they passed the Murphy's house, they saw Miss Murphy on the back porch. "Supper's ready, Peggy and Mike." Miss Murphy called out, "Come on in and get your ham and eggs." Peggy ran out to the gate first and called to Tina, "We're having ham and eggs for supper. Are you?" Tina shook her head. "No," she said. She ran straight home and said to Mama, "The Murphys are having ham and eggs for supper. Peggy said so." Mama laughed. Miss Murphy said so too. "Ham and eggs, my goodness," said Mama. "And Pat laid off 6 months already. Plenty imagination they're having, that's sure." "What are we having, Mama?" asked Tina. "Potato soup," said Mama. "Good and nourishing, too." On Sunday afternoon, Mama said Jeff and Tina could go to the hospital to see Uncle Jack. Uncle Chick came by in Uncle Jack's car to pick them up. Grandma went along. Tina had not been to Mapleton for a long time. It was fun to ride up the steep hill out of the coal camp valley to the big town on the highway that led to Charleston. It was exciting to see the big stores and churches, the post office and fire department. Though they were all closed on Sunday, soon they came to the red brick hospital. Uncle Chick parked the car and they went in. Grandma had her arms so full of packages, Tina had to help her carry them. They went up the elevator and down a long hall. They came into a big ward, with many beds along the sides. The men in them were sleeping, talking, or laughing. Which one was Uncle Jack? Grandma headed for a bed in the far corner. Tina tried to pull her back. That was not the right place, for there was a pretty young lady there, leaning over the man in the bed. Grandma must have made a mistake. Tina pulled her by the arm and said, "That's not Uncle Jack. Let's go find him." "Oh, yes, it is," said Grandma, dropping her packages at the foot of the bed. The pretty young lady turned around. To her surprise, Tina saw that it was Miss Sanford, her teacher at school. Why do you know my Uncle Jack? Asked Tina. Do I know him? Asked Miss Sandford. I sure do. Uncle Jack laughed and caught Miss Sandford's hand. Helen and I are the best of friends, he said. Helen, who's that? Asked Tina. Helen Sandford, said Uncle Jack. Miss Sandford's name is Helen. Tina looked at her teacher and saw that her cheeks were very pink. Grandma and Jeff brought chairs, and they all sat down. Grandma opened her bundles. She had cookies and fruit for Uncle Jack, pajamas and bedroom slippers. Oh, Uncle Jack, said Tina, I couldn't bring you any flowers. Grandma's dahlias were frozen up. Okay, honey, said Uncle Jack. It didn't seem like Uncle Jack at all. This strange man with his shoulder and arm in a cast, lying propped up in bed. He kept talking to Helen most of the time, while Grandma and the children listened. Jeff told him about Bright Eye's accident, and he grew sober. Ponies, said Uncle Jack. Who wants to use ponies in a mine? Have you heard about auger mining? That's the latest thing. The men and a big machine can get out more coal than 20 men with the old machines, and they never have to go inside the mine at all. They strip off all the topsoil and rock, and let the machine bore holes into the side of the mountain, and twist the coal out. But Jack, said Miss Sandford, I thought you were through with mining. Hasn't this accident taught you a lesson? Jack laughed and turned to his mother. Shall I give up mining and find some other kind of a job, Mom? Grandma looked sad and said, That is for you to decide, you and Helen. Grandma called her Helen too. On the way home, Grandma asked Tina, How do you think you'll like Aunt Helen? Tina did not know what to say. She liked Miss Sandford for a teacher, but could she ever learn to call her Helen, Aunt Helen? Chapter 6. Winter. Mama lighted a kerosene lamp and set it on the table beside the window, so Walter can see when he comes in, she said. She looked down the road at the row of houses below her own. The white snow made them look dingier than ever. A heavy snow had fallen, and the electric power had gone off. Soon all the houses will be boarded up, Mama said. The Davises went first. Soon the others will go too. She put a shawl around her shoulders, sat down, and took baby Letty on her lap. The baby had been crying all day. Winter was always the hardest time of the year. A truck pulled up outside and stopped with a jerk. A man got out and pulled a heavy sack of coal down. He carried it to the coal shed and dumped it. Then he went back for a second sack. The truck went on. Mama heard the back door open. That you, Walter, she called. Did you bring the coal? Yes, Mary Kate, said Daddy. I brought in a scoop bucket full. Fill up the stove then, said Mama. Fire's most out. House is freezin', and Christina sick. Daddy began to fix the fire. He shook down the ashes. Coal gas and smoke filled the room as he poured coal dust from the scoop bucket on the live coals. What? No lumps? Asked Mama. Only slack. Best I could get under the snow, said Daddy. He forgot to close the draft at the bottom when he put the coal in. Flames shot up toward the ceiling, right in his face. He closed the lid promptly and set the drafts. You say Tina's sick? He asked. What's wrong with her? Teacher carried her home in her car, long about noon, said Mama. Teacher said she was too weak to walk home. Teacher, asked Daddy, what do you mean? Miss Sandford, said Mama. Helen, don't you know? Ben Sandford's girl. Ben, your buddy in the mine, before he got hurt. So bad. He's in a wheelchair now all the time. Ben's girl is grown up and teaching school, asked Daddy. Yes, said Mama, she's got big ideas too. You'd never guess she was brought up in a coal camp herself. She said the kids had no business comin' to school with their stomachs empty, and no breakfast. Christina must a fainted at school, or fell over, or somethin'. Helen Sandford blamed me. What did you tell her? Asked Daddy. Told her I didn't have a thing in the world to feed 'em, said Mama. Told her we was lucky to manage one meal a day right now. What did she say to that? She got real mad, said Mama. And do you know what she said about Jack? Said Jack was giving up mining for good and all. Said her pa got crippled for life, and she wasn't going to let the same thing happen to Jack. Said Jack had had his warning. Now, what do you make of that? Sounds like there's something between them two, said Daddy. Then what did she do? She up and left, said Mama. No breakfast. My kids, no breakfast. Daddy sat down quickly in a chair. I know how it feels, as if the bottom of your stomach has dropped out. Those sacks of coal were the heaviest I ever lifted, he paused. And I never used to get tired at all when I worked 16 hours a day. Mama put the baby in her crib and came out again. Celia, where did you put that head of cabbage? She called. I'll cook it now. We got some coal dust to cook with. Celia came in from the bedroom. Bring any groceries, Dad? She asked. Bring any milk? Her father turned on her angrily. You think I've been to the grocery store and bought it out? He asked. You know, Celia, my credit's all used up at the company store. They won't give us a penny of scrip. My rocking chair money ran out last month. Where you been? Ain't you heard the coal mines closed down? Walter Wilson, like all the miners, referred to unemployment compensation as rocking chair money. I thought maybe they'd trust you for a can or two of condensed milk, said Celia. My baby's hungry for milk. Jeff and Tina and Ronnie have forgot what milk tastes like, said Mama. No meat or milk since October, only bread, potatoes, and beans for the last 2 weeks. Today, for a change, we'll have cabbage. Feed the baby cabbage, Celia. Daddy laughed, but it wasn't funny at all. Celia hung her head and went out of the kitchen. She did not like Daddy's jokes. No good going to the mine superintendent, said Daddy. He said it was all our own fault, getting in a fix like this. Said no matter how high wages the miners get, they never save anything, and when hard times come, not one of 'em can live a week. Guess that's about it. The kitchen warmed up as the fire caught the coal dust. Daddy tipped his chair back against the wall. He turned on the battery radio beside him, and soft music began to play. Daddy began to feel better. Where's my girl? He called out. Where's that little old teeny girl? Come here, teeny. Let me see how sick you are. A stir was heard in the bedroom, then the swift patter of bare feet on the cold linoleum floor. The tussle-headed figure of a girl came running into the room. Daddy, Daddy, she ran to her father and leaned on his shoulder. Daddy, Daddy, did you get you a job? Is the mine gonna open tomorrow? They'll open up when the company gets more orders for coal, said Daddy. They'll take all their men back again. I'm glad, said Tina. Tomorrow? Not just yet, sugar pie, said Daddy, but one of these days soon. Hey, you kid, what kind of big winter coat is this you're wearin'? Tina began to laugh. Big winter coat, she said. You know I don't have a big winter coat. It's the comforter off my bed. I had to wrap it round and round me to get me warm. I was so cold, I felt like an icicle. Gee, it's nice and warm in here. Let me sit on your lap. Big girl that she was, going on 10, Tina jumped on her father's lap and curled up. He folded his arms around her as if he would keep her from harm. He decided to tell her the truth. She was old enough to know. When a mine closes down, Tina, it's bound to mean hardship, said Daddy. Not only for us, but for every family in the coal camp. What's hardship, Daddy? Asked Tina. No coal, no pay, no food, said Daddy. That's hardship. All miners know hardship at one time or another when the men are laid off. Does it mean no treats in your bucket, Daddy? Asked Tina. Yes, no candy, cake, or gum, said Daddy. No trips to the dime store in Mapleton, asked Tina. No show on Saturdays. That's about it, sugar, said Daddy. But the mine will open up, won't it? Asked Tina. Daddy began to rumple her hair. Big old baby you, he said softly. Better not let your little brother see you settin' on my lap. He'll fight ya and bust your head open. I don't feel like fightin' today, Daddy, said the girl. Next time that Peggy Murphy hits ya, you yell for me and I'll come flyin', said Daddy. You don't feel good, sugar. I'm tired, not sick, just tired, said Tina. So tired I couldn't stand up no more in school. At the blackboard, didn't get my arithmetic done. The numbers kept jumpin' so. I know how it feels, honey, said Daddy. But Daddy, you didn't answer me, said Tina. Is the mine gonna open up soon? The girl looked up at him, and her face showed its pallor and thinness in the lamp light. Sure, sugar, the man said. Purty soon. Is the whistle gonna blow while I'm still in bed in the morning? Asked the girl. And will you go off down the hill before it's light? And will you save me a treat in your lunch bucket? Not tomorrow, said Daddy. I gotta go scrape up some more coal for us tomorrow, if the snow is gone, and more cabbage maybe. Helen Sanford wanted to know why the kids missed so much school, said Mama, comin' in. I told her the truth. Jeff's shoes are plumb wore out, and Christina's soles is flappin'. You're gonna go to work again and buy us all some new shoes, ain't you, Daddy? Said Tina. Her voice was warm with hope and trust. Sure, honey, said Daddy, purty soon now. Miss Cruppa came to see me, Walter, said Mama. She said I ought to go on welfare like all the other miners' families. I told her I just couldn't. We're not that low yet, said Daddy. That night, Celia and the children went to bed early, but Mama and Daddy sat up to talk. Things can't go on like this, Walter, said Mama. I know it, said Daddy. If we don't go on welfare, maybe we ought to clear out like the Davises and go away somewhere, said Mama. I wouldn't know where to go, said Daddy. I haven't enough education to get a job in town. I've lived here all my life. It's the only life I know. Can't you get a job in some other mine? One of the other big ones, asked Mama. They wouldn't take me, said Daddy. I'm past 40 and I've got scoliosis. Every man that's worked 20 years in a mine has got it. I'd be afraid to let them take x-rays. I know what they'd find. Besides, I have no car to drive a long way to another mine. But you can't wait forever for the company to call you back, said Mama. When they get more coal orders, they will, said Daddy. I want to stick by them and get my pension when I'm 60. I'm 50 now, it won't be long. But in the meantime, we've got to eat, said Mama. Yes, said Daddy, it means Molly Grub then. I saw a sign in the window of the company store today. There's to be a distribution of surplus government food tomorrow at the Baptist church at 4 p.m. Mama looked shocked. And you want me to go? Why not, said Daddy. That surplus food is all that is keeping the miners from starving. My buddy told me you can get free flour and rice and other food. We haven't much choice in the matter. Christina fainted in school today. She hasn't been getting enough to eat. It's not begging. Mama shook her head. I'd be ashamed to go. You're too proud, I guess, said Daddy. No more proud than you, said Mama. You won't go to work in my brother Chick's pony mine. Why not? You're too proud, that's the only reason. The big mine makes you feel like a big shot, so you stick by the company, no matter if your family starves. Daddy did not speak right away. You're right, Mary Katie said. It's pride. We're both too proud, and our children suffer for it. Will you go and get some of that Molly Grub if I start work in Chick's pony mine? Mama said yes, and Daddy took her in his arms. Tina stayed out of school for several days and spent most of her time in bed. One day she got up, put her old jacket on, and went outside, but the cold wind chilled her, so she soon returned. The fire in the heater had gone out, but coals in the open grate in the bedroom were alive and red. Tina went to the grate and bent over, rubbing her hands to warm them. Celia was in the kitchen, scrubbing the floor, and had the outside door open. As she opened the bedroom door to mop the door sill, the wind blew in, caught Tina's thin cotton skirt, and fanned it across the hot coals. The next minute, the flames shot up toward the little girl's face. Oh, my skirt's on fire! Her voice was a shriek of pain. Daddy in the front room threw his paper down and ran. The next minute, before she could think, he had the girl down on the floor and was rolling a rug around her. When she looked up, they were all staring at her. Daddy, Mama, Celia, and the baby. Jeff and little Ronnie. They were all scared and crying. After Daddy lifted her to the bed, he found that the palms of his hands were badly burned. Tina cried and cried because the burn hurt so bad. Mama's screams brought Miss Bryant running, and they took her clothes off. Her right leg was burned from knee to thigh. Miss Bryant found some salve, and they put it on. That night, Miss Bryant sent over a folding cot, so Tina could sleep alone instead of with Celia and the baby. The news of the mishap spread quickly. The neighbors came in to see if they could help. Miss Murphy came, wrung her hands, and cried. Miss Deal mixed an old-world recipe, and they put it on the burn. Miss Tucker and Virgil stopped on their way to Mapleton. Miss Tucker offered to take Tina to a doctor, but Mama said she had no money for the doctor's bills. It will heal in time, said Mama, little dreaming how long it would take. People kept coming in. Tina didn't know she had so many friends. They all felt sorry for her. Hilda Kruppa came with her mother and brought a bag of candy. Dave Hurley hobbled in on his crutches and offered to lend them to Tina when she was able to walk. Miss Sandford, Helen, brought letters from Tina's class at school and left her school books so she could keep up with her lessons. Even Peggy Murphy came and said she was sorry she had picked on Tina and given her a black eye. All the kinfolk came. Uncle Chick and Aunt Effie brought the cousins, Trig, Day-Day, and little Cindy. They brought her cards, candy, and gum. Grandpa and Grandma came every day, and Grandma always brought cookies. They all came but Uncle Jack, who was still in the hospital. The days were long for Tina, lying in bed. Sometimes Mama propped her up on pillows, so she could look out the window. The slate dump was covered with snow now, and after school she watched the children sliding down on sleds, or boards, or cardboards. Sometimes Jeff slid on Mama's coal shovel. By balancing the handle in front, he could go down fast. One day, when Mama asked for it, the coal shovel was gone. Jeff had left it at the bottom of the hill and had to go and look for it. One day Tina asked about the ponies. "I've got to get up," she said. "Poor Bright Eyes with his broken leg. I promised him I'd come and see him every day." "Gramp and I are taking good care of Bright Eyes," said Jeff. "The vet says we can soon take the splint off." Now there was more to eat, and Tina was not as hungry as before. Mama went to the Baptist church each time the surplus food was given out. She got beans, cornmeal, flour, butter, and sometimes other foods. Once the churches in Charleston sent down a windfall of canned milk, canned peas, and some sugar. Other women besides Mama, who had been too proud to go before, forgot their pride, so that their families might eat. Daddy started to work in the pony mine with Uncle Chick's men. He felt happier now, for he was earning again. Each night he brought Tina a treat in his bucket. Each night he sat by Tina's bed and talked, but it didn't last long, for suddenly Daddy started staying at home again all day long. What was it now? Had Uncle Chick's mine closed down? Tina hated to ask. It was Jeff who told her. The punch mine was flooded with water, and no one could work. Jeff had brought all the ponies up to Grandpa's barn. Uncle Chick and his men were trying to pump the mine out. They pumped each day and got the water out, but it came right back in again. Nobody could work, knee-deep in water. But a happy day came when Uncle Jack was allowed to leave the hospital. Daddy said, "Let's celebrate. Even if we can't work, we can have a little fun. We all need it." He told Jeff to ask all the neighbors to come in at 8 o'clock that evening for a party. "Shall I ask the Murphys to come?" asked Jeff. "Why, sure," said Mama. "They cause us lots of trouble, but they're our neighbors, and we want them too." When Uncle Jack came, Tina hardly knew him because he looked different. The cast was gone, but he still had his arm in a sling. Mama had a hard time explaining about Tina's burn. I know," said Uncle Jack. "Helen told me, but I never guessed it was so bad. You never took her to a doctor, and she's been in bed all this time." Mama was crying so, she could not answer. Uncle Jack leaned over and kissed Tina's cheek. "Okay, Cherry Pie," he said. "I'm going back to work again, and we'll get you well as soon as we can." At the party, Tina sat up in a chair and never got tired at all. She wore a new dress that Uncle Jack and Miss Sanford got for her, and she looked pretty even, though she was very thin. Tina watched the people as they came in, bringing coffee, cold drinks, and cakes and cookies. There were the Bryants, the Hurleys, and the Watsons, the Kruppas, the Collinses, and all the kinfolk. Then came the Tuckers and Virgil and Rita, followed by the Murphys with Peggy and Mike. They were all dressed in their best clothes. Pat Murphy brought his violin, sat down to tune up, then began to play. The women set the furniture back to make room for square dancing. The little coal camp house was alive with bright lights in every room, and its walls were fairly bursting with happiness and merriment. As the dancers whirled around, some of the men sat on the back porch and mined coal in conversation. The children frolicked, ate and drank, and had the time of their lives. Everybody forgot that the mine was closed down, and that there were few pennies to rattle in their pocket-books. Everyone forgot how close a miner's family can come to starvation, to mishap and danger. The breath of life was strong in them all. As they put their worries aside and deliberately chose to be happy, Tina watched the dancing and wished that she could dance too. When Uncle Jack came and asked her to try it, she took a few steps with him, but the old burn pained her so badly she had to sit down again. Miss Sandford came up and waved a kiss to Tina, and she and Uncle Jack danced away. Helen, said Tina to herself, Aunt Helen. She had loved her as a teacher. Could she love her still more if she became a member of the family?